Hi everyone and welcome on my YouTube channel. Before starting, I have a question for you. How is this period? Well, I know, but don't worry, everything is gonna be alright. But I'm not here to talk about a virus or something like that. I'm here to talk about Gothic novel. And I know you are interested in Gothic novel. And in particular, I know you are interested in Frankenstein novel, the most important and most famous Gothic novel written by Mary Shelley. Before starting to talk about some curiosity about Frankenstein novel, I'm very interested in give you some general information about the book and in particular where and when Mary Shelley had the idea to write Frankenstein. In fact, it was a dark stormy night at Lake Geneva Castle when some people started to tell each other some ghost story or to have some awaking dream or nightmare about the creation of life. From this awaking dream comes the idea to write Frankenstein novel. Now I'm going to tell you some curiosity, some facts behind the story of Frankenstein. For example, Mary Shelley had an amazing idea to write a Frankenstein novel. In fact, it was a big innovation for that time, for that period. The figure of Frankenstein, and still nowadays Frankenstein is like a source of inspiration for many movies, in particular 12 movies, for 58 plays. So these alternative narrative forms have still nowadays Frankenstein as the main character, and so this underlined how the brilliant mind of the author, of Mary Shelley, he's still leaving a mark also nowadays since the first publication of the book. In referring to the use of the figure of Frankenstein, so in referring to Frankenstein as a protagonist of an alternative narrative forms, we have to talk about the 12 movies in which Frankenstein is the main character, so the protagonist. Because these movies are not so faithful with the original story. In fact, they are the personal interpretation of the director of these movies. And in fact, they don't respect some description, some dialogues of the original story. In fact, if in one hand Mary Shelley describes the monster as an intelligent being that is able to read also Milton's poem, in the other hand, in the movies, the monster is an ignorant being that is able to answer only with monosyllables. So unfortunately, it's better read the book. In this way, we can understand the atmosphere that Mary Shelley wanted to create. But you already know these things because Frankenstein novel is one of the most important best-selling book of all the time. By referring to the copies sold or printed, we must talk about the number 500. Why the number 500? Well, because 500 is the number of the first copy printed in a cheapest paper, on a cheapest paper. And so nowadays is very incredible, it's quite impossible to think about Frankenstein novel as a novel that had to be printed on the cheapest paper. And moreover, Frankenstein novel was first published anonymously by Mary Shelley because for the mind of that time it was quite impossible that that a woman was able to write something like that, an innovation like Frankenstein and a novel like Frankenstein. And so she, for fear of prejudice, decided to hide her name. But nowadays, as you know, she is one of the most important author in the world, most famous author in the world, and Frankenstein, as I said before, is the most important Gothic novel. And Frankenstein is also an important source of inspiration for many films or many plays. Because Mary Shelley gave the basis for the horror story, for terror story, for the suspense, and in fact, all even if nowadays the movies are also the horror movies are full of elements that in my opinion stressed and exaggerate the concept of horror and terror, the atmosphere they wanted to create is the same that Mary Shelley did in the past. So they wanted to create a suspense. So the aim of the horror movie that nowadays we see is the same that Mary Shelley had when she wrote Frankenstein novel. In my opinion, as I said before, horror movie are full of elements that stress the concept of horror. In fact, I think that an horror movie had just to work on our mind.
Had to manipulate our psychology, our feelings.
And this way, only by this way, we can have fear to watch a film every time we wanted to see it, not only the first time. Because if a film is an horror movie, every time we see that film, we have to have fear to watch it. But nowadays, in my opinion, there isn't a specific horror movie that we have fear to watch it always, because nowadays the director or the cinematographic technique employs some elements that, in my opinion, as I said before, stress the concept of horror, like the movie full of blood. So sometimes it's better to read a story. This way we can imagine how the story, the settlement, or the places, or maybe the character. So, followers, we are at the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know in the comments if in this period you will see like an horror movie, or you will read an horror story, or maybe if you have a favorite horror movie. But anyway, I recommend you to stay at home. Bye!